Good morning, this is Mission Control Houston. Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's edition of Space Station Live this Friday, August 23rd. Joining us now inside the International Space Station Flight Control Room, where the team here has been keeping track of the systems aboard the station and supporting the day's activities of the Expedition 36 crew members. Leading the Orbit 2 team here in the station flight control room today is Flight Director Matt Abbott, shown here in the blue shirt on the right-hand side of your screen. And serving as Capcom next to him is NASA astronaut Jack Fisher, who's been relaying all ground messages up to the crew. And now aboard the International Space Station is commander of the complex, Russian cosmonaut Pavel Vinogradov, flight engineers Russian cosmonaut Alexander Mazurkin, NASA astronaut Chris Cassidy, shown here on the left-hand side, and then joining them there on the right just a couple of months after their arrival, Russian cosmonaut Fyodor Yurchikhin, European Space Agency astronaut Luca Parmitano, and NASA astronaut Karen Nyberg. Vinogradov, Mazurkin, and Cassidy had arrived at the International Space Station back in March aboard their Soyuz spacecraft after docking it to the Poisk module on the same day following their launch. Now in their 5th month aboard the space station, they will complete 149 consecutive days in space today. And then joining them, Yurchikhin, Parmitano, and Nyberg had arrived at the space station almost 3 months ago aboard the Soyuz spacecraft, docking their spacecraft to the Rassvet module on the same day of their launch back on May 28th. Today they will wrap up 88 consecutive days in space. The space station with its crew aboard is now flying at an altitude of just about 260 statute miles. The orbiting facility had just entered an orbital sunset just moments ago and is on a nighttime pass. It's making a southeast track, having just made its way across France, Germany, Ukraine, parts of Russia, and now coming across Kazakhstan and China. Yesterday, flight engineers Yurchikhin and Mazurkin had completed a 5-hour, 58-minute spacewalk. The pair had worked together to remove a space laser communication system from the hull of the Zvezda service module. They had installed a pointing platform on which a small optical telescope will be installed on a future Russian spacewalk, and they also inspected the antennas on Zvezda to ensure they were fastened securely after one of the covers had loosened and floated away earlier this week on Monday. Now with all 6 crew members aboard the International Space Station, after some time for breakfast, hygiene, and a daily station inspection this morning, the Expedition 36 crew had kicked off their day with the first of 2 daily planning conferences. These planning conferences are scheduled each day with ground controllers around the world to review the day's activities and also plan for the next set of tasks. Yesterday's spacewalkers Yurchikhin and Mazurkin had participated in a post-spacewalk debrief with specialists on the ground today. They are also performing several post-spacewalk tasks to properly stow away their Orlan spacesuits, equipment, and tools that were used in yesterday's excursion. In addition, they had opened the hatch to the European ATV-4 cargo ship that had been closed to support yesterday's spacewalk out of the Pirs docking compartment airlock. Meanwhile today, flight engineer Karen Nyberg is working with the ongoing study known as InSpace. This study examines colloidal fluids classified as smart materials, transitioning to a solid-like state in the presence of a magnetic field. The InSpace team believes the knowledge that is gleaned from this investigation may contribute to new technologies and new manufacturing processes that are based on the idea of having these nanoparticles act as self-assembling building blocks for larger structures. Flight engineer Luca Pomitano has been busy with the recycled tank transfers to tanks in the docked European Space Agency cargo ship, also known as ATV-4, the automated transfer vehicle. He soon will be working in Columbus to collect some saliva samples as part of ongoing human research studies. And meanwhile, flight engineer Chris Cassidy has been performing some maintenance to the water recovery system with a recycled tank changeout. The water recovery system converts urine, sweat, and condensation into drinkable water for the crew. Each of the crew members will also put in their daily 2 hours of exercise using the onboard gym equipment that includes a station bicycle, a treadmill, and an advanced resistive exercise device that simulates weightlifting here on Earth. The crew will then wrap up the day with a final daily planning conference with the ground, and is scheduled to go to bed at 4:30 p.m. Central Time. After the crew goes to sleep tonight, also robotic ground controllers here at Mission Control Houston will be sending commands to move the mobile transporter rail car to the correct work site for the walk-off of the Canadarm2 robotic arm from Harmony's power and data grapple fixture to a similar fixture on the mobile base system. This work comes in advance of preparations for the ground-commanded robotic movement of spare parts from the exposed pallet that was brought to the station on the HTV-4 cargo ship, and which now reside on the front porch of the Japanese Kibo module to their proper locations on the truss of the station. This is Mission Control Houston. We are getting a live view aboard the International Space Station. Here in this view is Flight Engineer Karen Nyberg. Nyberg had just wrapped up her work with the ongoing study known as InSpace 3, which examines colloidal fluids classified as smart materials that are transitioning to a solid-like state in the presence of a magnetic field. She has now moved on to her work with the combustion integrated rack to remove and replace a manifold bottle. The combustion integrated rack is a part of the fluids and combustion facility. The combustion integrated rack is used to conduct experiments that look at the combustion processes in microgravity. And now we're getting a view aboard the International Space Station with Flight Engineer Chris Cassidy here in the view. Cassidy had been working with the some maintenance to the water recovery system. He would be performing a recycle tank changeout, and that water recovery system is a unique system that converts urine, sweat, and condensation into drinkable water for the crew. This is Mission Control Houston. We're getting a live view aboard the International Space Station with Flight Engineer Chris Cassidy. Cassidy has been aboard the space station since March of this year. He is scheduled to return home along with his Soyuz crewmates, now commander of the space station Pavel Vinogradov and flight engineer Alexander Mazurkin, on September 11th on local time in Kazakhstan. And now we're back to another view aboard the International Space Station with flight engineer Karen Nyberg. Nyberg had just joined the trio about 3 months ago on May 28th. Her, along with Fyodor Yurchikhin and flight engineer Luca Prometano. Nyberg is currently working to replace a manifold bottle of the combustion integrated rack. That rack serves as a facility of which the astronauts aboard the International Space Station can perform a variety of combustion experiments. And now we're back inside the International Space Station Flight Control Room, where the Orbit 2 team continues to monitor the systems and support the crew's activities aboard the International Space Station. Again, the Orbit 2 team today is being led by Flight Director Matt Abbott, shown here in the blue shirt, and next to him is NASA astronaut Jack Fisher, who's been serving as Capcom, relaying all ground messages up to the crew. Meanwhile, all 6 crew members aboard the International Space Station continue throughout their workday this Friday, coming after a very busy day yesterday of another successful spacewalk on the Russian side. Again, yesterday, flight engineers Yurchikhin and Mazurkin had completed a 5-hour, 58-minute spacewalk. The pair had removed a space laser communication system from the hull of the Zvezda service module. They had also installed a pointing platform on which a small optical telescope will be installed on a future Russian spacewalk, as well as they had inspected the antennas on Zvezda to ensure they were fastened securely after one of the covers had come loose and floated away earlier this week on Monday. Meanwhile, today, those spacewalkers, Yurchikhin and Mazurkin, have participated in a post-spacewalk debrief with specialists on the ground. Today, they are performing several post-spacewalk tasks to properly stow away their Orlan spacesuits, the equipment and tools that were used in yesterday's excursion. Earlier this morning, the pair also had worked together to open the hatch to the European ATV-4 cargo ship that had been closed to support yesterday's spacewalk out of the Pirs docking compartment airlock.
Houston Station on 2 from the airlock.
Yeah, Chris, we're listening.
One of the items that came back was I can't remember the name of this thing. It's like a caddy with 4 horizontal bungee cords that you can jam tools down in. Multi-purpose caddy, maybe? I can't remember exactly. But it's got a part number of SEG 33106936-303, serial number 1004. Is this one of the items that was transferred custody to them? Because it's not on the list that the stow matrix.
And Chris, yes, that actually was transferred to Russian custody, so that was supposed to stay back in the Russian segment.
Copy. And then there's the little two-tether thing. On one side of it, it says modular tether point assembly. On the other side, it says Orlon tether adapter assembly. I thought Orlon tether adapters were a different thing than the two-tether thing. And is that supposed to stay with them also?
Yes, that is supposed to stay over there as well. Could you clarify whether or not you have one or two of them?
Just have one, so that makes me think that I'll go clarify it because I have this 1007, and I'll go make sure that they have 1006, and I'll bring this other caddy back over. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thanks, Chris.
This is Mission Control Houston. We were just seeing, they were just coming out of view as Flight Engineer Chris Cassidy, and back and forth you saw Flight Engineer Karen Nyberg as she continues her work there. Cassidy was just sharing an exchange with the Capcom here, NASA astronaut Jack Fisher, shown here next to Flight Director Matt Abbott. They were discussing some of the tools, and Cassidy is working to assist in some of the post-spacewalk stowaway tools, to stow away the tools that were used in yesterday's spacewalk, in determining which of those tools are stay on the Russian side of the house and which go back to the U.S. segment. Again, all 6 crew members continue throughout their busy work days aboard the space station the last day of the week, here this Friday.
And I'm with you on 2, Karen.
Great. I'm complete with the SIR activity. It's ready for RPC to be commanded back on.
Very good. Thank you.
And is it okay to do the MSG deactivation yet, or should I wait?
And Karen, you got to go for MSG deact.
Copy that. Thanks.
This is Mission Control Houston. We are looking at a live view aboard the International Space Station. We were listening to an exchange with Karen Nyberg, Flight Engineer Karen Nyberg aboard the International Space Station, who had just completed her work to replace a manifold bottle of the combustion integrated rack. We heard her call down completion of the CIR work, and that is CIR. Again, that stands for the combustion integrated rack. That rack supports combustion experiments there aboard the space station. While the 6 crew members continue throughout their busy work day, they're aboard the International Space Station. They are flying now at an altitude of a little more than 260 statute miles. They are on a nighttime pass, flying southeast, coming now just across Australia, and will swing out over the Southern Ocean, where it'll eventually make a turn and
Go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, I wish I had thought about this before I powered down the video drawing stuff, but if you guys want, I could probably do one more in-space run today. I think there's probably time. You would know better than I would if it would finish before the DPC or not. But anyway, I'll hold off for 10 seconds to do the power down, and you guys can talk about it.
All right. Yeah, give us a moment, and we'll get back with an answer.
Houston Station on 2.
Yeah, Chris.
The tool EVA stows complete, and I just put the completed tool matrix in OCA down for Houston. Confirmed that they now have both of those tether adapters, and the only delta you'll see in the matrix there is that the one of the camera addresses is one of the camera assemblies is on 3011 instead of 3005, which was called out in the message. 3005 already has a TV camera on it.
Sounds great, Chris, and pretty much you're done with all your activities through next Wednesday, so we'll see if we can come up with something else for you to do.
Might be time to go home after that.
This is Mission Control Houston. We're getting a live view aboard the International Space Station. We were just listening to an exchange between Flight Engineer Chris Cassidy, shown here in this view, who had just called down to the ground, speaking with Capcom NASA astronaut Jack Fisher, just notifying the team here that he had completed the task of stowing away the tools that were used. He mentioned the EVA tools. That is, those were the tools that were used in yesterday's spacewalk.
Station Peninsula on Space to Ground 2 for Karen and in space.
Go ahead.
Hey, Karen. I think we like your recommendation to do another run. If you are willing, PD is certainly willing to support. We think it can be done by DPC, no problem. It would just be test point 112 again. And if you're willing, by all means, go for it.
Okay, I'd love to.
Yeah, we sure appreciate that. Nice little bonus.
This is Mission Control Houston. We are looking at the inside the International Space Station Flight Control Room. This is the Orbit 2 team who continues to monitor the systems and the crew's activities aboard the International Space Station. It is a productive day, as Cassidy had just called down moments ago to notify that his tasks have been completed. Now then, Nyberg had called the Payload Integration Center, offering to perform yet another run of the InSpace 3 experiment.
Central Station on 2 for InSpace.
Yeah, go ahead.
So is everything in a good config then for starting in step 1 of the operations procedure? I can't remember if the video drawer is already powered on when I come up to it or not.
Let us do a quick check. Karen, video drawer is off right now, but the ground is going to make that happen here just momentarily.
Copy that. Should I wait then before I start, or can I get into getting the vial prepared?
Karen, you can go ahead and start.
Copy that.
And Karen, the video drawer is configured at this time.
Copy that. I see that. Thank you.
This is Mission Control Houston from inside the International Space Station Flight Control Room here, while the Orbit 2 team continues to monitor the systems and support the crew's activities aboard the space station. Now here with a live view aboard space station and flight engineer Karen Nyberg. Just to the right of her is the microgravity science glove box. She had called down just moments ago to the Payload Integration Center there in Huntsville, Alabama, offering to perform another run of the InSpace 3 experiment. She had been working with that earlier this morning, and as mentioned, she's going to now perform yet another run of that experiment. This ongoing study, known as InSpace 3, examines colloidal fluids classified as smart materials, transitioning to a solid-like state in the presence of a magnetic field. The InSpace 3 team believes the knowledge that is gleaned from this investigation may contribute to new technologies and new manufacturing processes. This is Mission Control Houston. Again, we are getting a live view aboard the International Space Station. Shown here in the center view is flight engineer Karen Nyberg. Nyberg had arrived at the International Space Station back in May, on May 28th. She's now in her third month aboard the space station. You can see just in front of her, she is facing the microgravity science glove box, preparing to set up and conduct another run of the InSpace 3 experiment. This is again, Nyberg had worked with this experiment earlier this morning and offered to conduct another run now that most of her tasks are completed and she has additional time to do that. She is now setting up for that additional run. Again, this is the InSpace 3 experiment that looks at colloidal fluids classified as smart materials that transition to a solid-like state in the presence of a magnetic field. The hopes is that this investigation may contribute to new technologies and new manufacturing processes based on the idea of having these nanoparticles act as a self-assembling building blocks for larger structures. Those larger structures would be structures such as bridges and buildings that could better withstand earthquake damage here on Earth.
Fill station on 2 for InSpace. Mode to steady at 1538.
Copy that, Karen. Thank you.
Good morning, this is Mission Control Houston. Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's edition of Space Station Live this Friday, August 23rd. For those of you joining us now, we are inside the International Space Station Flight Control Room where the team has been keeping track of the systems aboard the station and supporting the day's activities of the Expedition 36 crew members. Leading the Orbit 2 team here in the Station Flight Control Room today is Flight Director Matt Abbott, and serving as Capcom NASA astronaut Jack Fisher, who is relaying all ground messages up to the crew. And now aboard the International Space Station is Commander of the complex Russian cosmonaut Pavel Vinogradov, Flight Engineers Russian cosmonaut Alexander Mazurkin, NASA astronaut Chris Cassidy, here on the left-hand side, and then joining them there on the right are Russian cosmonaut Fyodor Yurchikhin, European Space Agency astronaut Luca Parmitano, and NASA astronaut Karen Nyberg. And now let's have a look back at this week in space. On Monday, following their 7-hour, 29-minute spacewalk last Friday, the longest ever conducted by a pair of Russian cosmonauts, Flight engineers Fyodor Yurchikhin and Alexander Mazurkin spent their day on Monday reviewing procedures and installing equipment on their Orlan spacesuits to get ready for a second excursion later in the week. Yurchikhin and Mazurkin also participated in a debriefing with Russian spacewalk specialists to discuss last Friday's spacewalk. Then on Monday, flight engineer Karen Nyberg had spent her morning working in the Japanese Kibo laboratory, removing the nanostep experiment from the solution crystallization observation facility and replacing it with the Ice Crystal 2 experiment. Nyberg had also prepared new test samples for the Advanced Colloids experiment, also known as ACE, that is housed inside the microgravity science glove box of the station's Destiny laboratory. Results from ACE will help researchers understand how to optimize stabilizers to extend the shelf life of products like laundry detergent, paint, ketchup, and even salad dressing. And on Monday, flight engineers Chris Cassidy and Luca Parmitano had began their day by weighing themselves with the Space Linear Acceleration Mass Measurement Device, also known as the SLAM-D. Parmitano then had moved on to routine environmental health monitoring work as he measured sound levels throughout the orbiting complex. Cassidy, meanwhile, on Monday had set up a trio of bowling ball-sized free-flying satellites known as Synchronize, Position, Hold, Engage, Reorient experimental satellites, or spheres, for another round of tests. Working inside the Kibo lab, Cassidy had put the robots through their paces for a checkout of a new graphical user interface to enable human supervised control of those satellites. Cassidy also later had observed another free-flying object, this one floating outside the orbiting complex near a docked Progress cargo vehicle. He reported the unidentified item to Mission Control in Houston, captured video of it as well. Russian ground controllers had identified it as an antenna cover from the Zvezda service module. Then on Tuesday, flight engineer Chris Cassidy had collected water samples from a condensate line in the Tranquility node and packaged the samples for return to Earth and further analysis. Flight engineer Luca Parmitano of the European Space Agency had spent some time on Tuesday with a couple of cleaning tasks of the crew quarters and also onboard air intake and exhaust ducts, as well as the fan and airflow sensor. Parmitano then performed an ultrasound on Cassidy for the spinal ultrasound investigation. Medical researchers have observed that astronauts grow up to 3% taller during their long-duration missions aboard the station and return to the normal height when back on Earth. That spinal ultrasound investigation seeks to understand the mechanism and impact of this change while advancing medical imaging technology by testing a smaller and more portable ultrasound device aboard the station. On Tuesday, Cassidy also took a break to talk with reporters from the Military Times and WBUR-FM in Boston. Cassidy had discussed life and work aboard the orbiting complex and described the career path to becoming an astronaut. Then Tuesday, working inside the Japanese Kibo module, flight engineer Karen Nyberg spent her time replacing the infrared imager of the fluid physics experiment facility. She then rounded out her day with the surface telerobotics experiment as she remotely controlled the K-10 rover at the Ames Research Center in California. Using a special program on a laptop computer that provided live video from the rover and virtual terrain, Nyberg downlinked task plans to the rover, monitored the execution of those plans, and handled contingencies as needed. Meanwhile, back on Earth on Tuesday, NASA introduced its new class of space explorers that has officially reported for duty here at the Johnson Space Center. 4 men and 4 women recently selected as the 2013 astronaut class took center stage on Tuesday as NASA Administrator Charlie Bolden introduced the 8 astronaut candidates and answered questions from media about their selection and training as well as their support to future space missions. Then on Wednesday, flight engineers Fyodor Yurchikhin and Alexander Mazurkin had completed a final timeline review of the task they would perform during Thursday's spacewalk. Meanwhile, flight engineer Chris Cassidy worked on Wednesday to replace the multifiltration units inside the water recovery system. The water recovery system recycles condensation and urine into drinkable water for the crew, this reducing the amount of fresh water that might need to be sent to the crew aboard resupply ships. Cassidy then performed another ultrasound on flight engineer Luca Parmitano for the spinal ultrasound investigation. And with an eye toward the return to Earth in just 3 weeks, Cassidy joined Misurkin and Commander Pavel Vinogradov for a fit check of the Kazbek seat liners of their Soyuz TMA-08M spacecraft. They will ride home in for a parachute-assisted landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan on the morning of September 11, local time. Also on Wednesday, flight engineer Karen Nyberg spent part of her day in the Japanese Kibo module setting up a commercial payload. She also replaced a rope on the Advanced Resistive Exercise Device, just one of several exercise devices the station's residents can use for their daily 2-hour exercise regimen to combat the loss of muscle mass and bone density experienced by long-duration crews. Last but not least, on Wednesday, Parmitano had exchanged a test sample cartridge in the solidification and quench furnace for another round of data collection. This research furnace provides 3 heater zones to ensure accurate temperature profiles and maintain a sample's required temperature variations throughout the solidification process. It is one part of the materials science research rack that allows for on-orbit study of a variety of materials, including metals, ceramics, semiconductor crystals, and glasses. Then yesterday, on Thursday, 2 Russian cosmonauts wrapped up a 5-hour, 58-minute spacewalk, completing that spacewalk at 12:32 p.m. Central Time. The pair had completed the replacement of a laser communications experiment with a new platform for a small optical camera system, the installation of new spacewalk aids, and an inspection of antenna covers. Meanwhile, for the duration of Thursday's spacewalk, Cassidy and Station Commander Pavel Vinogradov were isolated to the Poisk module and their Soyuz TMA-08M spacecraft, while flight engineers Karen Nyberg of NASA and Luca Parmitano of the European Space Agency were free to move about the U.S. segment of the complex. Nyberg on Thursday had spent much of her day working with the InSpace 3 experiment, which examines colloidal fluids classified as smart materials transitioning to a solid-like state in the presence of a magnetic field. Parmitano meanwhile had rerouted an exhaust port on the amine swing bed. This technology demonstration is testing a smaller, more efficient carbon dioxide removal system. And today, on Friday, Yurachikhin and Misurkin had participated in a post-spacewalk debrief with specialists on the ground. They are performing several post-spacewalk tasks to properly stow away their Orlan spacesuits, equipment, and tools that were used in yesterday's excursion. They had also opened the hatch to the European ATV-4 cargo ship that had been closed to support yesterday's spacewalk out of the Pirs docking compartment airlock. Nyberg, meanwhile, today had spent much of her day working with the InSpace 3 experiment. Again, that experiment examines colloidal fluids classified as smart materials transitioning to a solid-like state in the presence of a magnetic field. Also, today on Friday, flight engineer Parmitano had been busy with the recycled tank transfers to tanks in the docked European Space Agency cargo ship ATV-4. He then spent some time in Columbus to collect saliva examples as part of ongoing human research studies. while Flight Engineer Chris Cassidy performed some maintenance to the water recovery system with a recycle tank changeout. Again, the water recovery system converts urine, sweat, and condensation into drinkable water for the crew. And each of the crew members will put in their daily 2 hours of exercise using onboard gym equipment that includes a station bicycle, a treadmill, and an advanced resistive exercise device that simulates weightlifting here on Earth. The crew will then wrap up their day with a final daily planning conference with the ground and is scheduled to go to bed at 4:30 p.m. Central Time. After the crew goes to sleep tonight, robotic ground controllers at Mission Control Houston will send commands to move the mobile transporter railcar to the correct work site for the walk-off of the Canadarm2 robotic arm from Harmony's power and data grapple fixture to a small fixture on the mobile base system. This work comes in advance of preparations for the ground-commanded robotic movement of space parts from the exposed pallet brought to the station back on the HTV-4 cargo ship, and which now reside on the front porch of the Japanese Kibo module, to the proper locations on the truss of the station. And that's it for this week in space. This is Mission Control Houston.
Alrighty, they're talking about it. Stand by. Thanks a lot for helping us out. Alrighty, Chris, there you are. Happy with it. Thanks a lot.
All right, we can try one bay closer, but I think it's going to be too close, and it won't fit in. We'll try it here, just 1 second, and if not, we'll put it right back to where we just had it.
Alrighty then.
And Two-Fish, if you guys can accept the camera of the long ways, so when you play back the video, it would be 90 degrees crooked. We can fit it all in. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
That is a great idea. Let's give it a try.
This is Mission Control Houston. We're getting a live view aboard the International Space Station. Here in the center of this view is Flight Engineer Chris Cassidy, as he and the rest of his crewmates, they're aboard the space station, continue their productive work days. They're aboard the space station. They are now flying at an altitude of about 257 statute miles on a daytime pass, making a northeast track coming across the South Pacific Ocean.
And no response required. You guys are magicians. That is a awesome view. Thanks so much for your help.
This is Mission Control Houston. We are getting a live view aboard the International Space Station. Here in this view is flight engineers Karen Nyberg, and just coming in and out was flight engineer Chris Cassidy.
And Station Houston on 2, no response required. But Karen, while you're on a roll with cameras, if you get a chance in the future here, the camera that you're watching, the in-space experiment, has a little smudge on it. If you could give that lens a quick rub down, that would be fantastic.
And that there was a word up to the crew from NASA astronaut Jack Fisher, who has been serving as Capcom today here in the flight control room. Next to him is Flight Director Matt Abbott. They're in the blue shirt here inside the International Space Station flight control room. And now we're getting a view aboard the International Space Station where Karen Nyberg had been working with the InSpace 3 experiment. This is in front of us is the microgravity science glove box where that experiment run has been taking place. Meanwhile, the space station is flying at an altitude now at about 256 statute miles.
Is that better, Two Fish?
Space station's current altitude overlooking the Earth provides a unique vantage point, as you can see here, from which astronauts have numerous opportunities to photograph various locations on Earth. Capturing an array of pre-identified geographical spots for Earth scientific observations is often part of the crew's daily task, as well as something the crew members enjoy doing on their own. Both the flight engineers Karen Nyberg and Luca Parmitano have taken several images of overlooking Earth and have posted them on their Twitter accounts. You can follow the NASA_astronauts to view some of these photographs, or you can follow them directly. Astro Luca or Astro Karen N, again that is on Twitter. And up next on NASA TV, news and information about NASA missions and events across the agency on NASA Video File. We'll be back Monday morning here for another edition of Space Station Live at 10 a.m. Central Time. Until then, this is Mission Control Houston.